Hey, what's up? Just tapping in with the quick video, and I want to say that I'm making this one even for for comments that I made, and the type of person I am. I'm making a video right now when it's late as shit, and but I'm only making the video because I've been having a lot of ideas occur to me that I think are worthwhile. But I'm going through I'm going through tough right now, and I think I've done my best as best as I can on this channel to be as forthright and transparent about some of the things that I face without oversharing or blasting my situation or people more than I have to for the purpose of sharing. But the first thing I want to do with this video is something that occurred to me is that I saw a few things recently that were inspirational to me, but also insightful to me. And I actually want to for all the content that I've offered on this channel. I've been making this channel since about November of the calendar year of 2024, and I think I'm up to just shy of 700 videos. And I actually don't look at the analytics. Sometimes I'll go onto YouTube and I'll stumble into my own analytics, but I think I'm over about 10,000 views. Somewhere between like maybe between 10 and 11 or 12,000 views on the channel, and that's actually that's a lot for me from coming from steak and potatoes, Midwest boy. um, that's a lot of views for me but that's a lot of engagement, and I'm humbled by that, by each solitary view. I'm still the type of person where each view that I see on a video that I rendered with effort and sincerity, it means a lot to me. So, but I'll see like a lot of YouTube channels, and they'll have like this many thousand subscribers and this many views on a video and this many comments and stuff like that, and for me it doesn't compute. I think a lot of those videos, they're probably better curated, and you can't art and even content is the type of thing where you can't make a value appraisal of something that you do or even something that another person does, because it's rendered to an audience, and an audience experience is different than yours. But I see a lot of things get a lot of traction that I still can't fathom what that type of stuff means. But I just know that for me, even one view on a video that I rendered with sincerity means a lot. But all I meant to say is that even though I've gotten all things are relative. Like 10 subscribers, 100 subscribers, 1,000, 100,000, a million. That's all significant, but it's all relative to your station. But so what I meant to say is that near about 700 videos, near about 10, 11, 12,000 views, it's humble, but it's real like that, especially the type of content. But I actually want to disavow all my statements and my scholarship in learning in life to this point. I want to actually enunciate that I'm disavowing myself of my own statements and lively and scholarship uh, on all levels to this point in life. But I'm still gonna leave the content up and let it rock, and continue to make content when I'm inspired. Um, but like I've said in different videos, that's for the skill set, and that I still think there may be value in things that I've uploaded, because I have taken rigors and both to learn and to express that learning, which is part of learning. But a lot of things that we know about, that we hear about, that we are about is bullshit. I want to say that. I want to be one to say that, including myself. You could say that all the things that I've known about or expressed about online and in life is bullshit because of the foundation that we are on and at. So one thing that tipped me off to that, I was watching a video about a protest, and in this protest, it was like I don't know what the circumstance of the protest was, but there was a protest that was I think it was it had to do. It seemed like there wasn't a context in the video, but it seemed like it had to do with a contentious issue about race or racism. And there. It seemed like some of the people were masked, but there was a like a woman. There were some women or people that seemed to be Caucasian, and then like a couple people that were not Caucasian, but then there was a Caucasian journalist that was following and trying to figure out what's going on, and he was being called a racist, just like that, straight out by other people who are Caucasian, and then by someone who was not. And then he was being lectured to about what Caucasian people have done on the United States soil. But I was just thinking that that shows how arbitrary we are now, all of us, Caucasian and non-Caucasian, and any combination. We're all simply we're all really bogus because we're being reared, and we come through a legacy of things that are bogus, including likely whatever was being protested on that rally. I'm not saying that racism is not true, but we're so corrupt at this point that I don't think very many of us have the standpoint to protest anything unless we start from this standpoint that we're all human in the first place. That would be the solidarity in being a human being is the only standing to enunciate or redress anything, because we've all benefited on one. Like, I think that there's something very controversial that an outspoken that Kanye West once said, and I'll be near about as controversial to reference his statement. But one thing that Kanye West said, I think, is that that slavery was a choice. Now that in itself is that I think that could be a near heinous thing to say, because one is that it's anachronistic and out of context. So for a person like a person like himself, a statured person, but a person who has experienced some of the highest rungs and tiers of the bounty that's to be had with capitalism, with materialism, with the latter iterations of what has stemmed from the inequity and the stripping of equity that was constituted as slavery and is still slavery, to overlay a modern day perspective onto something as atrocious as, because a better word than slavery is human trafficking is what it had, because it wasn't slave traders and planters and masters. No, it was kidnappers and extortionists and rapists and murderers, things like that. Put children to work like that, put families to work like that, stuff like that type of stuff. So to make a comment to make a comment upon history from the present position, we don't have the learning and understanding and experience. You would have had to actually experience that degree of slavery to make that type of statement, to land that type of statement. And we still experience slavery, a lot of us. Like, or another example is the word slavery, right? That's a connotative. The word slavery is a connotative statement. You can make two type of statements generally. You can make a denotative and a connotative statement. So right now I'm driving in a vehicle. You have a different type of markings on the road here, right? You have uh so okay, so I'm looking at a green light right now. The green light is actually a little bit transcendent because it's almost connotative and denotative at the same time. But a better example would be, so I have the lane markers here. These are white lane markers that are separated. So what that white means is that you may drive in either the right lane or the left lane straight. You can pass on the right and the left straight. But so now I'm going to switch lane here. I'm switching lane to the left here. Now there's a double yellow line. So what the double yellow line is, that it's a yellow line, meaning that you may not cross to the left of that line. You may not also pass to the left of that line, because that would be oncoming traffic. But it's double because there's the same statement for the other side. that's technically denotative. It's not entirely denotative because it's still symbolic at that point. It's not outright expressed. So if you but a denotative statement would be the speed limit. 2 5, when 2 and 5 are together, the 2 is in the tens place, that's 20. The 5 is in the I'm sorry, the 2 is in the tens place, that's 20. The 5 is in the one place, that's ones. 25. 2 of 10, 20, and 5 of 1, 5, 25. MPH, M is a what's the word? Not abbreviation, but a I can't think of when there's a word for when a letter for one letter symbolizes a word. Um, like dang, I can't think of that word right now. But there's a technical linguistic term for when a letter refers to an entire word. Like I can't think of it spontaneously right now. But that M, it's it signifies, but it denotates miles. The P denotates per, and the H denotates hour. That's a denotative reference. But if you have something on the road that's like a squiggle line, it's like a little bit of a metaphor. Like you have like say you have something that it indicates that a lane's about to change, but it's just a drawing of what a lane looks like coming to an end. That's connotative. So it's reaching for, it's construing something, but it's not actually directly. It doesn't correspond in terms of etymology or like numeral symbols. It's so maybe you could say I'm getting off into the weeds a little bit. Maybe you could say that all symbols are technically connotative because like they say that all of our words were at one point metaphors before it became, even in the strictest etymology, most words like they if you go way back, they're like they're connotative, they're metaphor. That's the engine of language according to a book on poetry. I think it's something fourth edition poetry. I'll try to put that in the description. But what I meant to say, when you say slavery, slave, that's from Slav. I think that's Slavic. So a lot of people, if not all people, have experienced different degrees of deprivation, inequity, class structure. Like actually, slavery is actually a class structure. You could say caste, but it's actually class structure, arbitrary, um, sometimes race-based. Race basing something on race is not very different than basing it on quasi-science. So when you call it different, when you mock and deride and dismiss different people based on medical status, such as what's called mental health, that's not very far different than racism. It's about as arbitrary as to mock, and then also further castigate, set the caste to someone's detriment based on your own human understanding of what race is, similar to your own human understanding of what health is. Both of those are limited. You may not, as a human being, as a mortal being that is not experiencing enlightenment, understand or speak to what it means to be a human being of any distinction of what a human being can be, or what health is. You have not the standpoint to do that as a human being because your perspective is limited by your own experience. You are inherently biased as a human being because you can't help but to look out from your vantage point and standpoint, which is limited by your own interest to exceed and prevail. You have an interest to prevail. Therefore, what you say, do, and think is slanted by your own inherent interest to prevail. But so when you say the Slavic people have, I think they're a case in point of what slavery can be, and maybe they had an iteration of what we think of as slavery and reach for with slavery that was very heinous and poignant in the human experience, such as when we see people being stripped of equity, we call them slaves, as in Slavic. But in the United States, most of the people, a lot of the people, not all, but most of the people experiencing what's called slavery were not Slavic. So that's a connotative statement. But according to Tashri Bey, when you make a connotative statement, it's something of it can be a germ in that in the beautiful sense in art and poetry. It's a beautiful germ, and it can germinate self-expression, but it can also germinate misunderstanding and ignorance, because you are referring to one thing as another thing, but as that thing is not the thing it's being referred to, there's a you can interject and imbue it with a different meaning. So you therefore a little bit falsify and bastardize both what you're referring to and what you're referencing to refer to that by that connotative statement. So even the word, as soon as you say the word slavery, we're now off into the weeds of connotation, and therefore we are asking for trouble, and we are almost guaranteed trouble, according to thinkers like Tashri Bey. But to Kanye West's point is that there is something of gain in the overall system of what's called slavery now, and likely it would reason then in what's in the times of slavery. There are people in an entire broad structure that's arbitrary, like slavery would be. There are different deprivations, but also surplus and bounties that attend those deprivations that can be accessed and enjoyed. And when I say enjoy, I don't mean like relish, but just to experience. There can be different degrees and positions within something like a structure like slavery, that can benefit both those subjugated, those who look like those subjugated, those who are related to those subjugated, and those not. But it's as it is unethical and based on suffering, it is thereby corrupt. And you could say that both the spoils and the sufferings are both corrupted. But also, but there are different means. So if you, let's say you're on a manor, a plantation, a ranch, whatnot. So all the people there are none of the people there, except for a very small, seldom few, are getting the real equity or bounty of their labor, of their essence. However, you would have some. You can imagine on a manor, on a plantation, on a ranch, people would be eating different. So a lot of people would be familiar with the term stud in the United States. Oh man, that guy's a stud. Oh, you're a stud, aren't you? There go a stud right there. We know what a stud means, generally what it feels like that means, but also we're on different levels familiar with what studding was in the American African experience. Now a stud versus a rank and file member of a plantation, of a manor, would enjoy different bounties on seldom occasion, different esteem, different privileges, such as reproducing their legacy. Even as heinous as slavery was, there would be something to enjoy of both the sensation of being a stud, but also the legacy of being a stud, because you can imagine that for the people who were studs and were not, now some of them may still have a life upon the earth, the studs that is, and some of them that were not may not. Some of the studs may also not, and some of the ones that were not may. But likely those who were studying would have experienced something different. Now that there was that much of a distinction in privilege, that is enough to keep the system going, because it's difficult to dispense with something that you get any form of bounty, even that's just to survive. A lot of people haven't been through hellified situations. I can't say that I have been, but I can imagine that we're going through a hellified situation, but there's still something of competition because we're inherently competitive. The sexual reproduction is inherently competitive, it's been said, because people like Rollo Tomasi has said that we are tournament mating species. So we're all going through hell, but this one got it a little bit worse than I do, and we're all suffering, but that one just fell out like that. There's a little bit of something of ego in us, that we all got it bad, but yeah, but I got it a little bit better. We can't help but be attached to whatever we enjoy. So all I'm saying is that I'm getting off into, I don't mean to be egregious with those statements, but just that the most, if you think about an abusive relationship, you could say that slavery can be, what's called slavery can be defined and appreciated as an abusive economic relationship of an entire people, of a hemisphere, of a continent, of a country. um, in an abusive relationship, the dynamic of an abusive relationship is not entirely punishment, because if it were entirely punishment, the victim would either cease to exist, that is perish, or or not tolerate at a certain point. Give a like, if you bet A lot of times a man, a woman, may actually possess within them 10 times the strength of a man or a woman, if not more, if push came to shove the right way. Nothing to lose, no holds barred, nothing to lose. That's formidable. That's the same as of a people. A people may have 10 times the strength of a people, infinite times the strength of a people, if push came to shove, if they're not also being coerced, because the coercion, the treating the benefits is part of what keeps an abusive relationship intact. It's not only fighting, but it's the love making after the fighting. It's the punishment and the apology, both, that keep an abusive dynamic intact. And I think that might have been what Kanye West was reaching for, is that there may have and likely would have been some form of compensation that is treating, that is benefit, even if it's just the bare means of subsistence. But also, maybe the greater point would be having a legacy, but just the bare means of subsistence that would keep something like slavery going like that. Imagine like the military, like, or people incarcerated. When you're incarcerated, you have nothing to enjoy, nothing. However, you get like sometimes they'll say like, oh, this one told on that one for a Snickers bar. Now you're in an interrogation room. That's not the same thing as years of incarceration. But say you're actually incarcerated, you have nothing of enjoyment. But we actually needed part of, we will see, human beings have and I don't mean to be condescending when I say see like that, but human beings have an instinct to survive. If you come to the worst of situations, the last thing that you may have is the instinct for survival that will serve you as it should, as it can. Part of survival is enjoyment, because if you have nothing to enjoy, you have nothing to fight for, nothing to believe in, if you have nothing to enjoy. So so part of survival is enjoyment. So you're incarcerated now. I watched a video once. I don't know which YouTuber said this, but it was a person who had been incarcerated. He said that what runs incarceration, what runs a corrections facility, it's not the guards and their power, nor the warden, nor the amenities in themselves, nor the inmates and their skill and their guile and their wits and their strength and their manipulation, for lack of a better word. It's the contraband itself, the leverage that may be had with contraband itself. That's what runs a prison. You could say that's also what runs the United States. A lot of people think they're afraid of the boogeyman. You think oh, this is a bad area over there. Because we know the dynamic now. We're all adults now. We know about a lot of things. We've seen a lot of things. We know that people are just people. We're not entirely afraid of people in and of themselves. We're not afraid of the boogeyman in and of themselves. We're not afraid of that area in and of itself. We're afraid of the contraband that may be present there. That is the unlicensed firearms that may be present there, that have statistically been proven to exist in that area. The unknown, the unaccounted for firearms that may be at large. I'd imagine that's what would give a law enforcement person, even a military person, some pause, some gravity, something to lose sleep about, something to pray about before assuming a shift, would be whatever contraband, because you're the this trained person. You're a commando now. You're Delta Force now. It doesn't get much. All things are relative, so there's a higher than anything. But we know of no higher degree of training than Delta Force, than SAS British Force, than some of your Middle Eastern special forces. We know of no such higher training. However, we know not all the contraband which may exist now. The different firearms that have been laying around since the Soviet period, the different firearms that have serial numbers that aren't accounted for. That in itself will humble and keep anything in check. Even the powers that be must account for the contraband that's unknown. So, but also that contraband can be wielded as leverage. So you can imagine that there were different forms of contraband, both in terms of physical property, but maybe also benefits, and status itself can be a form of contraband and can be used to access contraband and mitigate contraband. Status can. So in the time of what's called slavery, going back, you would have had different status and different amenities and privileges that would all be appreciated as contraband, and that can keep the system in check and going forward, because instead of us getting fed up with this bullshit, there's enough of it, there's enough treating in the form of contraband to keep us invested enough to give enough effort, but also give enough dynamics to get over. And also, you can't properly run anything of subjugation without the cooperation of those subjugated and their efforts to subjugate one another. You can't entirely subjugate a person or people from top down. You need actual lateral and maybe even down up enforcement to truly put the clamps down. And so that has been the case now, and we can extrapolate had been in the past. But still, to make commentary over bygone errors that were more of inhumane, and because we're speaking like educated people, but those people had not the benefits and privileges of education as we have, so we can't make those type of statements. But I do want to say that my battery's getting a little bit low. I had much more that I wanted to enunciate, but I almost want to bring this one in so that I don't lose whatever I've already created, as the battery's very low. But there were a few more. If I'm gonna double check how much life I have on here, if I can make some more statements, because I had some statements that coalesce with this type of commentary. Um, let's see. I'm gonna tap in for part two so I don't lose this.